Objection pursuant to Rule 1.1.2, 3, and 4 about leads and its compounds in PVC. So I will give the floor to the co-rapporteur, starting with Bas Eickhout again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This goes way back already, this file. This goes back to 2000, to be very honest. In 2000, we were already discussing, lead as part of being used in PVC, and it was used as a stabilizer in PVC. And already back then, the Commission also acknowledged that it's dangerous. We all know that. Lead is a toxic substance, and that there are no safe levels that can be determined by that. So that was already in a green paper by the Commission in 2000. We as a Parliament reacted to that with a resolution in 2001, where we said that we want a ban on lead in PVC. That was the Parliament's position in 2001. So this goes way back where we were already saying we don't want lead in PVC. Unfortunately, the Commission decided differently and decided to go for a voluntary phase-out. And that voluntary phase-out was supposed to be met in 2015. So we have now a phase-out of lead in PVC for European producers in 2015. We as a Parliament wanted an immediate ban, but okay, the Commission decided differently. Of course, now we get into the problem that this kind of voluntary agreement is not for the import of PVC. So now we get into this very strange situation where you have a phase-out of lead in PVC within Europe, but we still have imported products from outside Europe where PVC can still get on the European market. And that's why the Commission is now proposing a restriction on lead in PVC. By the way, a restriction that is not just saying we don't want lead in PVC, which we are saying for the European market. We are now coming up with a kind of an administrative allowed level for imported products. Okay, we can already have a problem with that, but of course the Commission will say, well, it's better than nothing. So that's step one. But then, while we are having that proposal, we are also allowing derogations. And we are allowing derogations for recovered PVC. So now we are creating a separate market. We have virgin PVC within Europe where we have this lead phase out, but because we had many years of production of lead still somewhere floating around, we now are saying, well, that can be prolonged later on for recovered products. Basically, we are using the argumentation of recycling now in order to allow longer lead in PVC. That's what we are doing. And this goes against everything that the Parliament has been adopting until now. And because I know that my EPP colleagues are still developing their position, and of course, Niels, also there I am full aware of the diversity and I allow everyone its time to get to that position. But I just want to know, or just want to stress, that also EPP adopted the Green Deal resolution last week. And in that Green Deal resolution last week, we are talking about non-toxic material cycles, which the Parliament is saying, we want non-toxic material cycles, and explicitly we say, and considers that these should not be reintroduced on the EU market in consumer products through recycling activities. That's exactly what we're doing here. We are, through recycling now, allowing the longer existence of lead into PVC products. So this is exactly going against what we adopted in the Green Deal resolution last week. By the way, there was a roll call vote on that specific paragraph. 643 members of this Parliament agreed with that paragraph. So a very strong position. And now we have the first test case. The first test case is here, lead in PVC. And the Commission is saying, well, we do a restriction on the imported products, but allow more than the ban. And on top of that, we even allow more lead in the recovered products. And on top of that, the Commission is saying we want a label on that. A label that will say that, that you have to say recovered PVC. You know, it contains recovered PVC. But that even has a positive connotation. Because assume you are on a market and you have virgin PVC and you will have recovered PVC. And with that label, of course, people think, oh, recovered PVC, that sounds better. That's circular economy. But in the recovered PVC, there will be more lead allowed than we will have in the virgin PVC. So we are even creating labels that are very confusing and misleading to consumers and producers. And on top of that, it is unfair for all those people that have developed their alternatives already without lead. So what the Commission is doing here is really wrong in all sorts, and that's why we put on a objection together with my colleagues from Renew and S&D. And just the last point, because then the point will of course come and say, yeah, but we now have a lot of products with lead, PVC with lead, which we cannot deal with. So that's why we want to recycle it. Well, first of all, you are prolonging the problem and just, you know, let's put it back into the cycle again. Then we don't have to think of the waste. But secondly, and here we're going to challenge our chemical industry. Every time when they are lobbying our offices, they are saying the future will be chemical recycling, chemical recycling. Well, this is exactly a point where chemical recycling can offer a solution. But then they have to show it that they can work on it. So this could be the first test case for the industry to deliver on chemical recycling, where you take out the lead out of the PVC. And therefore, just prolonging it through recycling would really be a very bad idea on that sense as well. So I think the objection makes very much sense and would be very much consistent with all the decisions that we have taken as a parliament until now, including the Green Deal resolution last week.
So you had the privilege to talk about 7 minutes. So because you were the leading author, I would say, of the objection. But please, I will ask the others to be a bit shorter. So Maria Arena.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick because what Bas has just shown is the following. First of all, a voluntary approach is often not the right approach, and we are more in favor of binding or compulsory schemes, and that they should be adopted as soon as possible. Now, on lead in recycled or recovered PVC, let me say the following. It's 0.1%. That's the rate of lead in recovered PVC, and it gives the impression that it is not toxic, and yet it is, because there is no safe limit. The second thing is that consumers might tend to go towards recovered PVC, which might seem responsible type of behavior, and yet consumers that would buy recovered PVC would actually be led to more toxic products, and I think that would mislead consumers. And thirdly, the fact that there are alternatives we want to make sure that there are alternatives to what there is, what is suggested today, and the fact that there are alternatives means we should support them.
Object for Renew.
Thank you very much. I think what Bas presented, there is one thing that maybe requires correction, or maybe how, if the Commission would phrase it differently, we could accept it if they would have not recovered PVC, contains recovered PVC, but contains hazardous chemicals, would be a more appropriate label. Because let's be honest, really, and I have to repeat this, lead doesn't have a safe threshold. In the history of science, what the scientists believe was, okay, this is a safe threshold, and it kept on getting lower, and they didn't find the bottom. And this is about, let's be honest and bluntly, our children and the neurological development, specifically of the children. And what this derogation is proposing is to just extend the problem and actually make it bigger. Because what we have, this is an attempt to kind of cover some of the lead-containing PVC with, in some of the applications, not all, with 2 sheets of virgin PVC. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to multiply the problem at the end of the day. We're going to have more PVC contaminated by lead. And I would say a bit of correction, it's not 0.1, it's actually 2% of lead that can be still in the recovered PVC part. And I think this is about polluter pays principle. This is about the producer responsibility that the producers of PVC containing lead has to take. And that's where the chemical industry needs to get its act together and ultimately ensure that we don't maintain the hazardous chemicals in the circulation, that if the Commission says that they're going to present a circular economy plan, it doesn't contain loopholes or actually really pitfalls like this, because this is about not only putting the health and environment in risk, and by the way, the environmental impacts in this were not assessed, but it is also about discouraging circular economy. And I think this is where this derogation has potentially broader implications than just impacts on health and environment. And let's be honest, this is not a short measure. We're talking about 15 years, which is a very, very long time period and totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the EPP, Alexander Benhuber.
Herzlichen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender.
Thank you very much, President. For us, of course, it's important that we have as little impact on human health as possible. And essentially, we are in favor of a scientific basis for any action undertaken. Now, when we're talking about recovered PVC, we don't think it's a huge problem, because the risk assessment has said that this wasn't really a major problem. And this is the ECHA's risk assessment has said that it wasn't a major problem. Otherwise, if this PVC weren't recovered, it would end up in landfill or burnt. So here I think we really need to consider our options when we're thinking about circular economy and the possibilities of recycling. Now, it is expected that lead concentrations of recovered PVC by 2030 or by 2040 will decrease sufficiently so that products from recovered PVC would reach this threshold of 0.1%. But, well, how much really, when you have almost 100% plastic, what difference does 0.1% lead make? I think we need to think logically about what this really amounts to, 0.1%, and the lack of damage that it would really do to humans. Essentially, we feel the Commission's proposal is a good compromise, which deserves our support, and we would have liked to have further. We would have liked to have had further conversation, which wasn't possible, so we would reject it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe it's not a surprise, but I'm unable to support the objections, and I reject the argument. My understanding, along with the 24 member states in the REACH committee, that this RPS measure is necessary, and we should give the Commission the time it needs to recycle end-of-life PVC. In my view, the objections makes 2 important but highly misleading claims. Firstly, it argues that the promotional labeling of recovered PVC articles containing lead goes against the objective of the REACH regulation, and this is incorrect, as the labeling provision helps ensure a legislative distinction between recycled and unrecycled PVC, and the Commission has a clear precedence for this under REACH with cadmium. And secondly, the resolution suggests that the technology for chemical feedstock recycling of PVC waste that would allow the separation of and safe disposal of lead is already available. Nevertheless, there is no evidence to support this, and while there are some pilot projects of note, there is nothing available that is commercially viable. I would therefore like to remind the objectors about IHA REC conclusions, which states that the lead concentration limits and the derogations are necessary in order that, and I quote now, alternative would be to divert such articles to landfill or incineration at the end of their service lives, rather than recycle them, which would increase emissions to the environment and not reduce the risk. I strongly doubt that the objectors would welcome more incineration and more primary raw materials use, but that is effectively what will happen if this objection is endorsed by the Parliament. By supposedly solving one environmental problem, you risk creating another one that is far worse.
Thank you. So to conclude, I give the floor to the Commission, Mr. Fleur.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members. More than 6.5 million tons of PVC products are produced yearly in the EU. Imports of PVC articles are constantly increasing. Every year, about 750,000 tons of PVC waste are recycled. 10% of waste, PVC waste, does not contain lead stabilizers because EU industry has discontinued their use since 2016. The remaining material contains lead as legacy from former production or from imports. So this legacy is also to be found in former production in the EU. The proposed measure addresses the problem of human exposure to lead by prohibiting the use of lead in the production of PVC articles. Furthermore, it prohibits the placing on the market of PVC articles, including imports containing more than 0.1%. The measure includes a 15-year derogation for certain articles containing recycled PVC. This is mostly relevant for construction materials. However, derogated articles made from recycled PVC have to be coated with lead-free layers to protect humans and the environment. Why do we need this derogation, which is criticized? Recycling of PVC is an effective way of preventing additional lead emissions to the environment because it delays disposal of PVC containing lead. Unfortunately, chemical recycling is not yet available at large industrial scale to cope with the amounts of PVC for recycling. We are talking today about pilot phases only. The derogation buys time, I call it we are buying time, until more effective waste treatment technologies and safe disposal recycling of lead is made available. According to ECHA, the proposed measure will substantially reduce lead in articles made of recycled PVC over time. This means that in any event, the derogation for recycled PVC will be limited in time and be removed when not anymore necessary to support recycling. Removing this derogation from the proposed measure will not allow the recycling of 675,000 tons at least of PVC that will have to be disposed as waste. This will require additional landfill space or new incinerators. We have to bear in mind that this will substantially increase the overall immediate releases of lead into the environment, as significant amounts of waste PVC articles containing lead would be directed to incineration. This is the waste disposal route associated with the greatest release into the environment. In addition, opposing the draft restriction will mean that lead-containing PVC will continue to be imported into the EU without controls, without levels, while EU industry has started producing lead-free PVC since 2016. We believe this proposed measure, including its derogation, is fully in line with the general aims of REACH and strikes a fair balance between addressing the health and environmental concerns related to PVC containing legacy lead and encouraging recycling and the circular use of PVC. We have listened carefully to your reasons and also to the remarks made now here in the discussion. Still, the proposed measure is the balanced result of 5 years careful work. Should the Parliament decide to object, and this is your full right, it is unclear at this stage how long it would take to have a new measure that is supported by a qualified majority of Member States and the Parliament. The proposed measure was supported in the REACH Committee by 24 Member States based on an ECHA opinion. This is what I would like to say to defend our measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will vote on the objection tomorrow, and if passed in ENV, we'll vote in the plenary in February. So thank you. It's the end for today. We will meet again at 9 tomorrow, and we will start in 2 minutes the meeting for coordinators. So please, coordinators, stay in the room.